Afternoon, and welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. One more week till Passover.
That's it.
You know, this is big. You know, so we talk about Passover. You tell me the big theme of Passover, and if you look at it, we start out as slaves, and we end up as free men. So I assume the theme of Passover, and it makes sense, is freedom. You know, the difference between slavery and freedom, and it must be so important that for thousands of years, every year, that's all we talk about. Freedom must be a pretty important thing.
Right.
But, you know, I'm not really sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of cultures were slaves and freedom. The Romans had slaves. The Greeks had slaves. You know, everybody had slaves. Why is it not that big a deal for everybody else, which I'm not figuring out? And even America had slaves. And I think, and then of course we freed our slaves. But are we, I guess the question is is the definition and the understanding of what freedom is. Are we even really free today? We live in America, the most free, the home of the free, the land of the free it is. This is a free society. But I'm thinking about, are we really free here? I mean, so I'm thinking of some examples. Let's say you're a family, you have a farm out in Kansas or Nebraska somewhere. It's been in your family for generations. And then the patriarch dies. So then, and the farm's probably not making that much money. You're barely getting by. And the government comes to you and says, okay, well, here's what we value your property at. And I know your father paid taxes his entire life, but now we want you to pay that amount of money now, or we're going to take your farm from you. Now, of course, the family doesn't have the money to do that. They're barely getting by,
Right.
All right, we take the family farm. Is that freedom? I'm not sure. Take me, for example. I'm a slave. I am a slave to this country for probably about 50% of the year. I am required by this company to work just as hard as I do the second half of the year, but the first half of the year I have to work for free. I have to work for free, and if I disagree with it, I argue it, they're going to put me in jail. And the worst thing is, half the people in this country, they don't have that requirement. Just me, I guess, because I made different political choices, or I'm not liked by the current ruler. I'm a slave to the country, and if I choose, I don't want to pay it, I go to jail. That's what taxes are.
Talk about, what do you mean? Try lighting up a cigarette in your own establishment.
No, and
can't even smoke a cigarette.
I thought you were allowed to smoke cigarettes. I thought you're allowed to do a lot of things, but you can't do it. And even this, and here's where I think it's not just me. I think you're going to have a bigger problem. Someday soon, I hope not you, but let's say it's you. Two men are going to come into your office, and they're going to say, Rabbi Freeman, we're gay men, we're Jewish, we want you to marry us.
Right.
Now, I'm assuming there's a good chance you might say no, because it's a free country. You don't choose. You don't believe in that. But that's not the way it works. In fact, this is more realistic than you think. There's a guy out there that's a wedding photographer. Two gay men came in and said,
just lost.
Film our wedding. He lost. They said,
he
no,
lost.
You have to do it. Not just that. This is even bigger than that. Nuns, right? There's a group of nuns out there that do nothing but treat the elderly, the sick, and the dying. That's what they do. The government is telling them they have to provide contraception and abortion pills to the sisters that work there. Now, I'm going to tell you, number one, religiously they don't need it. And if you see, I'm not being rude here, but you see the nuns, they don't need these contraceptives no matter what. I'm going to tell you right now. The government is going after them full force, the whole force of the United States of America going after these nuns to tell them they have to provide a contraception, which doesn't seem right. Do you hang out with nuns a lot?
No, not too much. None.
None. Well,
None.
Don't make a habit of it. It's not really a good thing. But speaking of nuns and contraception, just one contraception nun story I think is really important for the show.
Right.
Do you know why nuns always travel in pairs?
No, but I know I'm going to be just enticed to hear this.
You probably need it. They do that so that one nun can make sure the other nun don't get none.
Yeah.
This is true. So but the point of that story is, because that joke, nuns don't need contraception. They probably don't need baby things and breastfeeding things. They don't need that. But is that a free society?
You talking about being enslaved? Even if I was a photographer and I went to take pictures at the homosexual wedding against my religious beliefs, and when they paid me, I paid my taxes and sent it to places I didn't really want to. And throughout the whole evening, I didn't smoke a cigarette in the building because I wasn't allowed to. And I do everything. You know what?
What?
Even when I finally come home, and I sit down, put my feet up on the coffee table, and turn on the game, you know what?
What's that?
My wife comes along, she says, could you clean out the fridge? Passover's coming.
Oh, no.
And I can't even when I get home, I'm a slave to her.
Wow.
There is no freedom.
None.
It's horrible.
None.
Look at the Jews. The Israelites, they were freed from the slavery of Pharaoh. And they got out into the desert and they brought them into the land of Israel. And it's wonderful. Now they're in the land of Israel. All they got to do is pray 3 times a day and tie straps around themselves and be sure that they never go out without strings hanging from their garments, and make sure, of course, that they don't eat any ham and they only eat the kosher meat, and then make sure that they don't do any work on the Sabbath, but make sure that they work like a dog before Passover, and I don't know. Where's the freedom?
Yeah, you lost me here. You lost me at the first stop there. I don't get that.
I mean, God even tells them that they got to tie their right shoe before their left shoe. Wow. You can't even decide which of your shoes to tie.
So what's up with that?
Where's freedom?
But we celebrate freedom. Freedom's the most important thing to us Jews.
Right.
I don't get it.
And by the way, in general, in the world right now, the United States is very big about exporting freedom. The freedom's a big thing. Let freedom ring, and we represent freedom and democracy. There are a lot of people in the world, they don't even care for it. It doesn't mean anything to me, because I know that I'm going to live with a boss. He's going to either be the sheik, or he's going to be the king, or he's going to be the prime minister, or he's going to be the strong man, or the tribal chief, or whatever he is. But most of the people in the world, they don't have freedom, and a lot of people in the world, they don't even care about that.
It's probably not number one on their priority, no.
As a matter of fact, someone was just telling me, the difference in psychology between Eastern Ukrainians, who are more Russian-oriented, and Western Ukrainians, more European-oriented. Even the concepts of what they call freedom, they define them in very different ways, and accepting authority and all that. So a lot of people enslave themselves to all kinds of things. People voluntarily enslave themselves to things. People will be part of some group. You have to show up somewhere at a certain time. Oh, we're having this big event. I got to go stand in line for 20 hours to get. I just was talking to a guy that Kentucky won, so he has to go to Dallas.
Wow.
You know what tickets? He just found this out Saturday night, of course. You know what tickets are like to get to Dallas?
I'm sure that's not
tickets
cheap right
to
now.
get there. The ticket to get into the game. And even when he gets into the game, of course, he's going to be watching most of it on the Jumbotron, because he'll be so far up in the stadium, he won't even see anything. So, but he has to go. I said, why are you going? Have to go. If you're a true fan, you have to go. So you could say, well, he chose really to do that. But, what they do is all the fans, they say, no, you have to go. Like, they create it sort of as this compulsion, and somehow or another that seems to even make it holier. Like, if you're enslaved to it, the real fans have to go.
Right. No,
so
it's
almost like you're esteeming slavery. If I'm enslaved to the entity, then that's really good, because the people that aren't, they're only sort of like quasi. It's really good to be totally enslaved. So what's the deal? Like, if we want freedom, what is slavery? And slavery seems to be attractive to many people. A lot of people like to be enslaved.
In fact, we seem to continually enslave ourselves to different things.
People love it. People love it. People love the latest, must-see TV. People love the latest thing that will obligate them to do something. Right. So what's going on?
That's a good point.
So,
good question.
The truth is, ultimately, people are seeking, I believe, and I think this is what the Torah tells us, people are seeking ultimate meaning. There are 4 words that we got. There are 4 active words in the Torah. And our sages, when they came up with the Passover Seder, they wrapped the Seder around these 4 words. And the 4 words, you can tell when the 4 words are used, is when we get to the 4 cups, the famous 4 cups.
Yep.
You don't have 4 cups, you don't have a Seder, right? The Seder is like, it's all about the 4 cups, like that tells you where you're at, You start off with the first one, you make the Kiddush. No. So we are told that those 4 words are found in the Torah because God uses 4 different terminologies to talk about freeing us.
Okay.
One is, I will take you out. The next one is, I will save you. You could be taken out, saved, redeemed, and taken. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. take out, saved, redeemed, and taken. Okay? Those are 4 different languages. They say, well, what does that mean? All talking about like getting free, getting out of there, right? So what's the 4 different languages? They said there are 4 different stages. There is number one stage. You're enslaved. You're a slave to Pharaoh. You're working all day long. He's got a taskmaster. He's beating you and you're carrying the bricks and all that stuff.
Right.
Okay? So number 1 freedom is you can stop working.
And this one I get.
Okay, got that.
You're done working.
They're not
You're
beating
no longer
you
a
anymore.
slave.
Yeah, we're not going to make you work. Those long hours and brutal conditions. And if you say I'm too sick, they let you off. And as a matter of fact, the story of the freedom from bondage in Egypt, they actually were freed 6 months before the Exodus.
I didn't know that.
The last 6 months in Egypt, they didn't even work.
Wow, I didn't know that at all.
They weren't even working.
That wasn't in the movie.
Not in the movie. But things were getting so bad with the Egyptians and so chaotic because the plagues were already in full swing.
Right.
They just couldn't even enslave the Jews anymore. They didn't have it. They just weren't up for it.
Well, that's new.
So for the last 6 months, they were just free. But they couldn't go anywhere, of course. They still were slaves, but they weren't working.
I understand.
So that was good. The next thing is that he took them out of their bondage. The Egyptians stopped calling them slaves. They were free. See, up until then, they weren't working, but they were officially slaves.
Still slaves.
They're slaves. Couldn't go anywhere and all. Then they became free. Officially, you are free. Free to go. Free to go, free to do as you want, all that.
I don't remember
free.
that one in the story either.
Okay. There was another phase.
Right.
Okay. He took them out of the country. See, there's one thing is to have to work hard. So let's say, for example, you're a slave. You're living in a certain country, and you're a slave there. You got to work around the clock. So they come in and say, no. You know what? 9 to 5 only, real working hours, you're going to get a wage. Okay, that's good. But you have to work.
Okay.
Next thing is, you're not even a slave. If you don't want to work at all, you don't have to work at all. But you're still living here. Which means, you still have that identity like where you used to be and you still have all the trappings. And the third one is you're out of there altogether. You can go wherever you want. Leave the whole country behind. No one knows you and all that.
That's redeemed?
That is redeemed. And that's good. That's good. That's better. You're out of there. No one knows you've got this identity. Oh, yeah, that's the former freed slave, So it's really good. There's only one thing. There's one more level. What could there be? What level could there be after that?
Well, I think pretty much that's where most people probably stop.
Most people stop right there.
I mean, in all those other examples, from the Romans to the Greeks to even the American slaves, I think that's where it ended.
So the answer comes along a 4th level, and God says, I'm going to make you my slave. And that is the greatest level of freedom. Now, how does that work? Slave to God? So, okay, you swapped in Pharaoh and you get God instead. See, here's the big difference. The big difference is so crucial.
Well, God's got a lot of rules there, so
God's got rules, and not only that, you think Pharaoh can keep you enslaved 24/7? God can keep you enslaved 24/7 for 120 years in this world and all eternity in the next world.
And he knows what's going on.
Not only that, when Pharaoh is making you work, you can be thinking, Pharaoh, you are no good scum.
You can't do that with God.
But with God, he's even got your mind.
It's worse than Santa Claus. He knows when you're sleeping.
So he knows, right? That's
everything.
Right. He knows what you're thinking and he knows what you're doing. So you would think like, you got out of Pharaoh and you got in to be enslaved by God. You took a step back.
Wow.
You got nothing going on in your bedroom. You got no privacy, and he knows every single thing that's going on, and can never get away with anything, because he'll get you. Like even if you do it like one little minute, I'm sure even people who are slave to Pharaoh, they could sneak away for one split second and do something wrong and get away with it.
Right.
Somehow. But God never can get away with it. So how come they weren't worse enslaved? Why is that the ultimate freedom? And the answer is because it's not really that we don't want to be enslaved. We really do want to be enslaved, which means if you're enslaved, there's one value of slavery. Every single moment has value because every moment I'm doing something for the boss. So that is value. Sometimes if I'm not working for the boss, I'm just hanging out. I'm not doing anything for me or him. It's kind of a waste of time. But if I'm totally enslaved, I can be doing for the boss. But if the boss is just some boss, who wants to be enslaved to him?
It's not that good.
So I'm enslaved to Pharaoh. Well, you know what? Then the next guy's going to come along. He's going to knock off Pharaoh, and then I'm going to be enslaved to him.
Right.
And then the next one will knock him off, and I'll be enslaved to him. Or they'll all get knocked off, but then, my favorite band will come along, and I'll be enslaved to them, and I'll have to buy their T-shirt.
Right, right.
But God's enslaved to no one. And no one's going to knock God off. God's the most powerful. God's everything. So the only thing that's really, really worthwhile being enslaved to, that you would want to be enslaved to, is to that which is everything. Because if I'm enslaved to that which is everything, which is in total control, which can't be limited by anyone, can't be knocked off by anyone, then I'm enslaved to the only thing that actually has true value.
Has true value and has true meaning, because if he's everything and you're part of everything, then you're part of something important.
Because otherwise, if you're enslaved to your team, sooner or later your team's going to lose.
Yep.
And if you're enslaved to the latest trend, or to trends, they're going to keep changing.
Right.
And if you're enslaved to the czar, so then the communists are going to topple the czar. If you're enslaved to the communists, then someone's going to topple the communists. And then ultimately someone's going to topple the people who topple the communists who topple the czar.
Right.
No matter what it is, who you're in with, someone is going to knock them off. You're a Democrat, the Republican's going to knock them off. Republican and Democrat, someone's going to knock them off.
Right.
But if you are enslaved only by that which can never be knocked off, which has no limitations, which has no shortcomings, which is all powerful, that is something that's really worth being enslaved to. And it's the only thing that it is worth being enslaved to. If I have that type of slavery, that is of value, because that slavery, the advantage of slavery is it gives every single moment of my life value, because I'm always doing something for a higher purpose.
Well, now I understand a lot of things. I understand, one, why we would want that slavery with God, but I also now understand why there's so many Jews out there that are kind of moving away from that. They don't want to be slaves. I mean, I like my free time. I like to watch football. I like to watch the latest band. I like to do things privately in my room, in my house, or somewhere else that I don't want the boss watching.
Right.
So now I kind of get that too.
And it's very understandable.
Slavery's not that great to some people.
Right. And this is why so many times you hear people's objection to Judaism, as well as other religions. They're all why should I be working for the Pope, or why should I be working for the rabbis? Or the rabbis just made that up. It's not for real. The rabbis made it up. The guy is eating pork. He says it's because the rabbis has made up this no eating pork. So the rabbis wrote up the Torah. And you know what? If that's true, I'm right with him. Why should he be enslaved to that? The only thing is, if you believe that actually there is a God, number one, and that you're totally enslaved to that, then life can have tremendous value. Then that type of slavery is really good. So you can get to stop working, that's good, and you can have to not be a slave anymore at all, that's better. And you can even get out of the country where you were enslaved, that's even better.
Yeah.
But then what are you? You're a free agent, and you know what's going to happen? You're going to wander around being a free agent, you're going to end up being enslaved to something else. Somebody's going to come by. Either it's going to be of your own choice or against your will. Either the bad guys are going to come by and grab you up and make them your slave, or you're going to choose to be enslaved to someone. Everyone does.
So bottom line, everybody out there who thinks they're free are really not free.
Totally enslaved.
They're enslaved, but they're just not slaves to anything with any purpose.
Totally enslaved. We all choose. We chose to be in this country, and for example, we all chose that we're going to pay taxes. We don't like it. We grump about it. But we all chose that we're going to elect people and they're going to make laws and that we have to live by them, which is, bizarre. I hire a bunch of people to make a bunch of laws. Why am I willing to live by them? Because I need protection from the other guy. So what do? I give up my freedom because I'm afraid otherwise the other guy's going to hurt me. I give up the ability to smoke because otherwise I got to breathe in the other guy's smoke or something like that. Right. And that's all these freedoms. That's the way it is. And we all sign it all away. So we're going to willingly do that. And maybe we have differences about where to do it, but each one's going to have their own choice. All of them are going to fall short, and all of them are not really worth it. Unless I can become enslaved to that which has no limitations, no shortcomings,
right,
and no end. It's ultimate. It lasts forever. That's worthwhile being enslaved to.
So you're saying that God's laws are, say, more important than like limiting the size of a big gulp. Like I can't. So I can be enslaved.
No matter how big the gulp.
How big the gulp is, God's laws are more important than that.
Right, and even though Bloomberg has got probably like half as much money as God.
Right, he's up there.
Right.
But the big gulp is just not as important.
Right, that's right. People are insulted by it. Why should Bloomberg change my life? But people are not insulted when God said you can't have that big gulp because today's the Yom Kippur.
Right.
So then people, okay, that's great. You know why? Because God said so. Bloomberg said so. Forget it. I want a bigger one. I order a bigger one.
A bigger gulp.
Right, because I can't stand the fact why it's almost insulting for me to be the slave of him. And that's why people can't stand being enslaved and autocrats and all these megalomaniacs.
But you might also be answering why a lot of people can't stand to be religious people.
That's right.
I mean, who's going to tell me I like ham?
And that's ultimately, though, I would say for only one reason. The reason aren't religious, they really don't believe that God said that.
Or did they not want to believe that God said it because that makes it more difficult
Maybe
to refuse?
they don't, but if you push comes to shove, you'd say to them, do you really think, did God really say don't eat the ham? And they would say no. How many people would say, I really, really believe that God said I shouldn't eat ham, but I'm doing it?
No, you're right. That's not going to happen.
So many, right. They really don't believe that God said that.
Wow, so that's tough. So when you look at the Exodus from Egypt, it's not just the fact that we stopped working, not just the fact that we're not slaves anymore. It's not just the fact that we left. Listen, we left Egypt. It's great, but it's the fact that we have something higher and something more. Is that what true freedom really is, though?
People love to be enslaved to things. When they find someone that's really popular leader,
no doubt.
People feel so much better when there is a popular leader, and even if he requires sacrifice from people. Even if you require sacrifice, people are willing to do it because they identify with that, and you feel big, and you feel great, and you feel that your life has value. But you want to be sure that big is really, really, really big, not just moderate.
If you're going to go play for the team, you might as well play for the team that can't lose.
Right.
You might as well play for the winning team.
Find me the one that will never, ever lose. Find me the new trend or the new style that will never go out of style.
Right.
Right. That's the one you want. But anyone else? So there's a phrase that King David said, Al tiftechu b'nedivim, don't put your trust in princes, in the Son of Man that ultimately cannot save you. Because, there is no man or government that can always save you. Listen, I think this is what this is what happens. This is why you have the fall of nations. When people realize, as people I think are starting to realize now, the United States government, if you should be in trouble, the United States government, once upon a time everyone thought, I'm a citizen of the United States, I carry the United States passport, my country will find me, they'll save me. Well, nowadays, they really won't.
No.
I mean, you could be living in Crimea and they wouldn't even come get you, much less who knows where.
Right.
So they're not going to save you. And at that point, people realize, why am I thrown in with this group? And you start looking around for someone else that's powerful. This is why, take a look at Putin. He's getting more and more powerful. Why? Because he shows some power.
Right.
Power breeds power. But ultimately, no matter how much power you got, then that's why people have power. Have to keep exhibiting power because it's like a Ponzi scheme. You have to keep doing more and more.
Really
Otherwise, people, as soon as you show that you're not powerful, all falls apart.
Yep.
But if you find something that is ultimately powerful, then you got it. You're home. And that's why, even though they got out of the 3 levels, the 4th level is they became slaves to God. Once they're slaves to God, wow, none better. Slaves to Pharaoh, that stinks. There's nothing worse than being a slave to Pharaoh. Being slave to God, nothing better.
Even being slave to the good king. It's still,
Still a king.
He's still a king.
Don't put your trust in princes, in the Son of Man, who will not save you. Now, he might save you sometime,
right?
But sometime he might not even bother to save you, or sometime he might not even be able to save you.
He might be gone soon, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Trust the guy. What happens if he gets cancer tomorrow and dies? What happens if, who knows what?
Someone takes him out.
Yeah.
So the bottom line, true freedom I guess there is no ultimate freedom. Hey, we don't have to listen to anybody. That's not freedom. There's no. So people who, now by the way, if you ask a lot of people their definition of freedom, they say, I don't have to answer to anybody. That's freedom. Freedom means no one can tell me what to do.
Right.
That's not freedom, you're saying? That's not?
Stinks.
That stinks.
That stinks. Can you imagine that? Picture that. No one can tell you what to do. You probably, therefore, you're not married.
No, I would assume
Right.
not. No.
Right. You probably don't have any kids, because then you'd be tied down by all your. You probably don't have a boss. Okay, so you got to be running your own company.
Right.
And none of your competition or customers could dictate what you're doing.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
So where are you living? You're in a desert island, and even then, what are you going to do for food? So you're going to have to go work for somebody. There you go. You're enslaved again.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Find me anyone that is truly free. The truth is, no one's free, and people don't even want to be free.
No.
People don't. If a guy would come along and he would say, "I'll tell you what, I can straighten this country out. I can make it a great place, a powerful place, a strong place. But I'm going to need your help, and you're going to have to stand behind me, and you're going to have to give me money, and you're going to have to give me your time and energy." People would do it. People looking all the time to make commitments. People looking to get married. People looking all the things. And you say, well, they look to get married because what they get out of it. It's true, but like you get so much more commitment than whatever you get out of it.
It's true.
But people like to be committed. Ultimate love is if you would feel, wow, whatever she would say, I would do. People looking for relationships like that. They wish they had them.
That's true. Well, they were for a while, and then all of a sudden they say, "Wait a minute, it's not what I thought it was." Yeah. Again, you have to. If you look into history, like in the in Russia, in 1917, the ultimate goal was we're going to achieve complete freedom. We're going to share everything.
Right.
We're all going to get what we want.
Yeah.
No man, is this guy getting more? And it was a brilliant concept. Freedom. Every week, get what we want. Everybody gets equal. That lasted about 3 weeks. So
right.
3 weeks, so I went a little more, and you're going to have to work for me, and then they had to kill some people that had different ideas of freedom. But the concept, I guess, of that kind of freedom, of that kind of I get what I need and that's it, that doesn't really exist.
Right.
So what we're really looking for is a benevolent, true,
right.
all-powerful leader
right.
that we can follow and not have to worry about. Is this the right thing? Is that the wrong thing?
Otherwise, why don't you raise your kids with total freedom? When the kid runs around the house, wants to just go to the bathroom, just total freedom to do it wherever you want. Just do it right here, Just do it. Because you can't start restricting them. Well, obviously, we all know that it's better, really, to be restricted. It's better to lose those freedoms. Right. No one would ever raise a person and want total freedom. It never existed, and it won't ever exist. What really we want total slavery, but we all want to know that it's only slavery to the ultimate.
To the right.
Anything less than the ultimate is not worth it.
I like that. Now that's going to be, luckily for me, none of my family will be watching the show. This is going to be part of my Seder. You might have a problem. Your family probably watching. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
they're all glued in, all around the globe. I got people.
Right.
Yeah.
He got like 112 grandkids already, so they're all watching the show.
Watching, right.
So your Seder's going to be tough. For me, I got my whole Seder right here. This is actually pretty good.
There you go. There you go. See, I'm glad I came.
I'm glad you showed up today.
Glad I came. Did your Seder, right?
This is good for me.
Okay.
True freedom, the ultimate freedom, right here. God's your ultimate freedom.
Right.
Wow.
Do the Jeff and the Rabbi Seder.
Wow. I'm in. See you a couple weeks from now.
Yeah.